Hello, and welcome to my review of Demi Lovato's sixth studio album, Tell Me You Love Me, which was just released this past Friday, the 29th of September, 2017. Now, I will start out this review by saying that with me and Demi, it's a little bit of a rocky relationship. I really haven't actually fully embraced a full Demi Lovato album since her third studio album, Unbroken, came out in 2011. I still, to this day, think that actually is one of her strongest records. I think it has some of the best songwriters employed. I think it has some of the strongest vocal performances that aren't too also produced at the same time, because some of the problems I think we get with this new album for me is that although she has undeniable vocal range and talent, there's a real power behind her voice. I mean, she is not afraid at this point to belt. Although, unfortunately, there are a few instances where I feel like when she gets up to a certain octave, her voice does start to get a little screechy. And I really would think that she needs to work on train her voice a little to get a little bit less overpowering at that high range, because in some cases it doesn't work so well. But she definitely works very well in the lower range, and she has a very rich, deep voice kind of in that regard. But Demi's experimenting on this record more. She's going in a more R&B and soul direction compared to her previous album, Confident, which was almost entirely just pop music. And I actually really enjoyed that album for what it was. It's not an album I take very seriously, and it does have some songs that I deemed quite skippable, but it also had some really standout tracks. And one of the songs in particular, Stone Cold, really kind of got me thinking, okay, well, yeah, Demi definitely wanted to make a song like that song for that record. And I saw and kind of predicted that she would want to make an album that sounds a lot more like how Stone Cold sounded. A lot more kind of a little bit more acoustic sounding and a lot more sort of bare bones vocal performance. Unfortunately, on this album, there aren't any songs that really strip back the voice completely. There's one or two instances, but she still relies heavily on these sort of production R&B sounds that sometimes work and other times I think fall quite flat. And I don't necessarily think do her that much justice, especially also with the hip hop sounding beats on songs like Lonely. It sounds okay, but then it gets very repetitive as you keep going through song by song, and there's a similar sort of sound. Only on a few last couple of songs on the album does she sort of break away from that sound and go for a little bit more of an acoustic guitar sound on songs like Concentrate and Hitchhiker. So I wish there was a piano ballad on this album. I'm just going to straight up say that to begin with. I wish there was a song that sounded a little bit more like Stone Cold did for me, because although she definitely is showcasing her voice, she's not stripping this back enough at all to make any of these songs a piano ballad whatsoever, or even just an acoustic ballad, because there's all this stuff going on. Though that being said, she does have acoustic versions on the deluxe version of songs like Sorry Not Sorry that do sound pretty good. So I'm glad that she included that in the deluxe version to kind of help round out this album. But I'm really going to talk about the standard because I haven't heard all the deluxe songs. I haven't heard the Target songs. I never usually do listen to the Target songs of albums because, I don't know, I just never get my hands on them. But the album in itself, I would say, is definitely very hit or miss, and that's unfortunate, but I'm not too surprised. So what I am going to talk about are mostly the highlight songs on this record for me. Sorry Not Sorry, which was the lead single off of this album, was, I do admit, kind of predictable in its sound and its kind of message. It's got a nice message to, F you to the haters, but it's kind of just trying to be a generic top 40 pop song, and that's fine. It introduces the album pretty well because it does deliver on the chorus powerful vocals that are like really, really strong. But then there's also all this production going on that kind of absorbs the sound of it. So the richness of her voice is kind of absorbed by everything else that's going on in the background. I wish that maybe some of the leveling of the sounds of this song were altered a little bit so that maybe her voice was a little bit more powerful and some of the production was not so overpowering. And then in other parts, I feel like the production's very hard to hear. And anyway, there's some production things about this song I could nitpick, but overall, it's a very fun song, and it is catchy, which I think is something that a lot of these songs sort of stray from that territory, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I do think that if you're crafting songs still in the pop sphere, trying to create a hook is still kind of important, especially when you have such powerful vocal range. Because a song like Tell Me You Love Me really fails, unfortunately, to deliver a melody that's memorable. It's quite a unfortunately kind of forgettable song, even though it is the title song. It has some emotional weight to it because you can hear there's a little bit more of a desperation to her voice. The production, though, is very kind of simplistic, and the lyrical content is also on the same side, kind of very simplistic. We get that, it's her calling out to say, like, I need someone in my life right now. It's horrible being alone, which she kind of contradicts on other messages on the songs on this album. It's sort of all over the place in terms of where she is in her idea of, does she really want a boyfriend, or is she trying to find, if she's trying to just open up the field to anyone. It's a little bit ambiguous, which, I mean, I get a lot of artists have albums that are ambiguous, and they put lots of different facets and anecdotes of their real personal lives into these songs. And she's writing these songs with other songwriters, so she's just sort of singing what might feel kind of into her, where she is in her headspace at the time. So I can empathize with a song like Tell Me You Love Me, because we all want that feeling. We all can sympathize with that wanting for someone to express how they really feel. And we also always want to not be lonely. We want someone to hold at night. So this feeling kind of does carry through the arc of the album, which is why it's called that song. Sexy Dirty Love actually was one of those songs on first listen I thought was a little too brazen and maybe a little too over the top production wise. It's more of an electropop song, but with recurrent listens, I actually really started to get into it. And it's kind of just a fun, unapologetic pop song. And then this is another example where she does find a hook, and she does definitely have potential for radio play, which is not a bad thing. Demi's always been on the radio, so make another radio friendly song. Like, there you go. And again, it's not trying to be too much. It's not that pretentious. It's just supposed to be a fun song. So I don't have so much of a trouble with the vocal editing work or any of the production on that song because of that. The highlight song on this album for me would have to be You Don't Do It For Me Anymore. Lyrically and sonically, this song just sounds so triumphant and good. This song really carries this. I mean, it's an abrupt change and shift because it's suddenly, simmering down. Instead of getting things all excited, in terms of new found relationships, this is talking about, the disintegration of one. This is like, oh, you don't do it anymore for me. I lie with you when I lie with you. I love that double entendre. It sounds really well in the song. And she sounds so confident in her delivery on this song, even though she's talking about something that's really hard to sing about and admit to yourself that you actually have to leave this relationship, that you actually have to move on and find someone else. She sings it with conviction and clarity of mind. And her vocals are some of the clearest and crispest on this song. And I really, really appreciate the part where she strips back the production after the post bridge before she goes into the final chorus. That just lets you really sink your teeth into the sound of the song. And it's the one moment I was like, yes, thank you. Because it does allow you to really get yourself into Demi's voice and the emotion of her voice, which is something it's hard to access with all the other stuff that's going on in all these other songs. I mean, it has the best vocal range. She goes up a really high octave scale. So it's an amazing song for that. And it has actually a really good melody to it that I find really catchy, and you kind of want to just sing over and over. And I kind of want to say it. It's going to be my like anthem song for like if I ever feel like I'm in a relationship where I'm just like, you know what, I've had enough. This is the song I'm going to go to for that. It's memorable, and it's the song that carries this entire album for me. So definitely my favorite song on this album. And I know a lot of Demi fans are really liking this song, so I'm really glad it was included. Unfortunately, after that, we come to my least favorite song on this record, which I know is going to be very divisive for a lot of Demi fans because I know a lot of people like this song. Now, lyrically, I don't have a problem with it. Well, at least to the fact that I understand she's definitely gone through her share of daddy issues, and she's had a very rocky relationship with her father, which she has written about on every single album, which I always really appreciate because you can really sense the raw emotion tied behind this message and the raw emotion of the song. But unfortunately, this time the meaning gets a little bit lost in the fact that she's talking about a love song with someone else, and she's just sort of bringing in the fact that she has daddy issues into the song as just sort of another sort of way to express it, which I mean is unique and different from how she's done it before. So it comes maybe at this point like she's definitely moved on. Like she's like, hey, look, I'm not going to sing and cry about this anymore, but I am going to let you know that I still have this past. I have this issues with certain things. It's sort of like more kind of unapologetically stating it rather than kind of emotionally letting you know, like, about, like, some emotional breakdown you're having about it, which is fine. She's more confident than ever on this album in her delivery, which but this, production and the sound and structure of this song is all over the place, and I just cannot get my head around it. I just no matter how many times I'm listening to it, it just sounds so cacophonous and so kind of haphazard and lazy, and I don't know if it's just the producers were just like, "I don't know, let's just act really weird." This isn't the only time Demi's kind of made a song that's very screechy and shouty that doesn't really have a melody or hook, and it's really unfortunate. I really wish that this song could be a little bit better for me. It is personal taste, but I'm finding it really hard to understand what people find so appealing about the sound of the song. I understand that she has vocals, but the vocals over just random notes and stuff just doesn't necessarily sound that good. And there's not actually really much range in this song. It's more just this one kind of note shouted over and over again. And it just feels very grating to the ears for me. So it's definitely my least favorite song on the album. Ruin the Friendship is, begging to basically, and it's not opaque at all in what it's trying to say. It's basically saying, like, and it's been rumored and now kind of confirmed to be about Nick Jonas, and she's basically pleading at this point, like, let's ruin this friendship. Let's turn this into something a little bit more PG-13 or R-rated. But it's still not that memorable for me. And the same with Only Forever. I was really looking forward to the song Only Forever. And the sentiment of the song is really beautiful. But however, the melody is just still lacking, in my opinion. When we come to a song like Lonely, though, we do get sort of this structure that I sort of can bite my teeth into again. It's sparse production and it's very hip hop sounding. Obviously, it's featuring Lil Wayne, and the Lil Wayne part I do have a little bit of an issue with. It's very monotonous and it's a little bit too long. It goes on for a little bit too long. But I really actually do like the tone of her voice when she sings it. The notes sort of trail off in a really kind of unique and very kind of sexy way that makes you really kind of feel the emotion of her singing this song. But it feels desperate, which does come across really well. I mean, she's singing how lonely she is. And you really get that feeling of someone at night, like just in their bedroom, just like breaking down, but also sort of feeling themselves at the same time. So it's a sexual song, but it's forlorn. And those two elements work really well for this song. And also, the power of her voice is somewhat subdued, just a little bit, so that it's a little bit more, less shouty, which I really appreciate. You still hear how good her voice is, but it's not over the top, like belting at the top of her lungs. Crybaby is another highlight for me. It's got much more of a kind of soul sort of sound to it, and it feels very it's very relatable. It's like, oh, we don't want to break down and cry, but she's not breaking down. She's still very confident in her delivery, and it has some amazing key changes that I think really showcase the sound and tone of her voice really well. Again, this is the sort of chord progression and key change stuff that I wish was on a lot of these other songs, because it makes them more interesting sonically to listen to. There's some gospel-esque sounds to this song, so it hints to that direction that could be almost embodied by like a full choir. And she's using her voice as like a one woman choir. And I really appreciate that about this song. And it has a really sort of melancholy but beautiful melody to it. The next song, Games, a little bit hit or miss for me. Again, it's the one other song on the album that just didn't grab me through repeated listens. And the production, again, is a little bit all over the place. I'm not really sure if they were experimenting, it just didn't really pay off very well for me. However, lyrically, I really relate to this song because being ghosted or just not knowing where your partner's at or what's going on, playing these games is so frustrating. And there is a frustration to that song that I can't understand the sort of way they fit together, because there is just sort of this franticness to not knowing and being frustrated by all these games that someone might play. I date men, but you're acting like a little boy. And no, I ain't your little toy. Two can play at these games. So don't, drive me insane because, I'm going to fire back. And, we don't want to play this game. We don't want to do this back and forth, chess match with no victory. Let's try and figure this out. So lyrically, thematically, this song definitely fits in the context of a breaking up of a relationship, but also an understanding, just like, and being relatable to like everyone in terms of understanding what they're going through. So Concentrate and Hitchhiker, these two songs are sonically very similar in structure, especially at the beginning with the verses. And I think that was somewhat intentional because I think these songs were somewhat once considered to be a similar song, kind of all blends together. They both have differences in the chorus, which I really appreciate. The one thing I will say about Concentrate that makes me like Hitchhiker a little bit more is that in Concentrate, as she's going towards the chorus with her vocals, there's this reverb that's done to her voice. So there's this vocal effect that really gives it this echoey sound, but it's also very robotic sounding. And that was a real turnoff for me. I was like, why does it have to sound like that? I want it to sound much more organic. And I like that you don't, I like that you get more of an organic sound to her voice with Hitchhiker. Even though actually the melody's not quite as strong on that song, it kind of is ruined for me with Concentrate because of that vocal effect that's done. I don't know what kind of vocal effect that was, but it sounds very electronic, and like she was like right up against like a speaker and it was reverberating in front, and it just does, it kind of irks me. And it really comes across when she says, I'm gonna paint your body with my lips. Like there's just that sound, and I'm like, oh, this would sound so much better if it didn't have that effect. But otherwise, these two songs definitely have sort of this like come together after. Well, this song is sort of like more about the actual relationship, and it's sort of like, well, I'm gonna still fall in love with you every night. Like you just bring me back all the time. Whereas Hitchhiker is sort of understanding this, like, maybe I'm meant to sort of just test the field. She sings about like I'm just gonna be like a hitchhiker and get into different beds each night, basically with that metaphor saying like maybe I'm not at a point where I can have someone commit, and that they can tell me they love me and I can tell them I love them, which is a little contradictory to the message of the theme of this album, which is why I said thematically in terms of love, these songs do kind of go all over the place. But like I said, that's not uncommon for a pop album or any album, because we're all experiencing different aspects of a relationship, and we all kind of reconcile them together and put this through in like a diary of understanding how a relationship forms, how it breaks down. All of these things come to the fray. And ultimately, you can sense that there is a bitterness and a jadedness to Demi's understanding of love throughout this album because, tell me you love me. I'm frustrated at this point. Like, we're at a point where things could be so good, but you're withholding. And so this album sort of shows the frustration and then shows the understanding of like, well, even if we make up, there's still something not right here. Maybe I'm better off understanding that I'm better to let go from this. I need to be more confident in myself. Once again, there's sort of that message kind of under the surface. And so honestly, it's an okay album. It definitely has some pop iconic hits to it, and I can see it doing very well commercially. But I just reviewed Miley Cyrus's new album, Younger Now, and unfortunately, I am seeing a lot of people not liking that album very much and praising Demi's album. Where for me, it's kind of the opposite. I'm saying they're both good and they both are very different albums. It's kind of hard to compare. I mean, it's kind of ironic that they were both released on the same day, and they're both by Disney, ex-Disney stars who are the same age. This is both of their sixth albums, which is so ironic. But they couldn't be in completely different they couldn't be more in different places in their careers, in terms of experimentation. Although both of these do feel like somewhat the music that they felt like they wanted to make. Demi always wanted to make more soulful R&B music, and Miley wanted to make more country, Nashville sound type music from her roots. So those two things are reflective in that, and I see those similarities. So, I can't help but compare, but I also don't want to. But for me, Miley, she self wrote all these songs. These are a lot more personal sounding and they're not as mainstream sounding. And I appreciate that because I am more of an alternative music fan. And although I do like pop music, I'm very particular when it comes to pop music. And some of these songs on Demi's album just feel very forced or last like a little bit all over the place, and I just can't really get into it because it's also still kind of just like a pop song. If it's an alternative song, I can forgive maybe it sounding a little cacophonous sometimes because I understand that's how alternative music is. But with pop music, you gotta be like, you gotta have a melody, you gotta have a hook. And a lot of these songs kind of miss that, but half of them do. So it's not like, it's like 50-50 for me. There's like half the songs I really like, half of them and Daddy Issues. Yeah, I am never going to be a fan of that song. I'm sorry. I appreciate what she was trying to do with that song, but to my ears, it just does not sound good. So be curious to know what you think in the comments. I know a lot of Demi Lovato fans or even pop music fans in general will really love this album. And I'm not saying it's a bad album by any means. I mean, it's all subjective taste. But for me, I do a little bit more prefer the sort of more organic feel to Miley's album compared to this album feeling like it is a little bit trying to chase after trends with just some experimentation and like soulful R&B scattered throughout. And like I said, I really want her voice, even though it does shine in terms of it's loud and it's there and it's hitting notes. I want the production to kind of let it really take the forefront. I want her voice to more take the reins, and I really would love to see Demi be able to actually write more of her own lyrics because I really think you can tell at this point with pop music if someone wrote the lyrics themselves or if it's songwriters because the writing on this album, it's like it's relatable stuff, but it's stuff that you could see on any Tumblr account, just like people talking about relationships. You know, like it's not that personal. Whereas like Miley's lyrics, you can tell Miley wrote them. It just has Miley written all over the lyrics to these songs. And I don't know, I'm just missing that personality connection there with Demi. Um, which is, it is what it is. I don't know if Demi ultimately wants to be like just a songwriter. She kind of wants to just sort of sing. And she does have a powerful voice, and that does come through. So I give her props for that. There are some amazing songs on this record. And again, like I said, it's just very hit or miss. So let me know what you think in the comments. I will review more Demi albums in the future. I definitely want to review Unbroken because it is my favorite Demi Lovato album. So I will be doing that at some point in the future. I don't know. I've got a lot of stuff I got to review, but let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye.